Once, 50,000 years ago, there was a land in the middle of nowhere with no people. This land was called Australia. It was a wasteland with no type of civilization except for the kangaroos. But then, about 45,000 years ago, the first indigenous aboriginal people came. They came to Australia during a time when New Guinea was connected to it, meaning there was much less water between Asia and Australia if they came through Indonesia. However, they couldn't just walk to Australia, since there obviously still was a lot of water between the two giant land masses. Therefore, they had to go some of the way by boat, becoming some of the world's first mariners. The first indigenous Australians developed a hunter-gatherer lifestyle and used stone tools like most other people around the world did at some point. However, unlike the rest of the world, Australians were never able to become farmers, and thereby never creating anything like a stable civilization on their own.
And then the Europeans came. But counter to what many believe, James Cook was not the first European to discover Australia in the year 1770. In fact, the first Europeans to set foot here came 164 years before him in 1606. These men were from the Dutch East India Company and travelled on the boat named Duifken, led by Willem Jansson. In fact, up to 29 voyages had been made to Australia before James Cook's voyage. They even mapped out part of the continent, but not knowing that Papua New Guinea was not connected to Australia, and given that they had never been to the east coast, their map looked like this. Part of the reason that the map looked like this was also that humans had always believed that there was a giant continent in the southern hemisphere, creatively called the Southern Continent. They thought this because they thought that the land there was in the northern hemisphere should be balanced out by the land there was in the southern hemisphere. This belief also led to one of the first ever world maps.
In the year 1770, Cook and the Endeavour mapped the eastern coast of the continent. From that voyage came a much better map of Australia than the one previously made, showing the entire east coast.
When Europeans first settled, it is estimated that there was between 750,000 and 1 million aboriginals. But when the Europeans came, that population may have fallen with up to 90%, becoming a mere 75,000 or up to 100,000. This was because of all the foreign diseases the Europeans brought with them, such as smallpox. The British colony of New South Wales was established with the arrival of the first fleet of 11 ships under the command of Captain Arthur Phillip in January of 1788. The fleet consisted of over 1,000 settlers, including 778 convicts. A few days after they arrived at Botany Bay, the fleet moved over to a more suitable Port Jackson and established a colony at Sydney Cove on the 26th of January 1788. This settlement led to the foundation of Sydney and exploration and settlement of other regions. The governor of the settlement, Captain Arthur Phillip, had an intent to establish harmonious relations with the local Aboriginal people and try to reform as well as discipline the convicts of the colony. After the founding of New South Wales, Australia was divided in two, an eastern half named New South Wales and a western half named New Holland. Later the continent was divided into the 7 states we know today: New South Wales, South Australia, Queensland, Victoria, Western Australia and Northern Territory. Between 1788 and 1868, approximately 162,000 convicts, of whom 25,000 were women, were transported to the Australian colonies of New South Wales, Van Diemen's Land and Western Australia. Whether transportation managed to achieve its goal of reforming or not, some convicts were able to leave the prison system in Australia. After 1801, they could gain the so-called tickets of leave for good behavior and be assigned to work for free men for wages. A few went on to have successful lives as emancipists, having been pardoned at the end of their sentence.